Chapter 1: The Invitation. It was a stormy night when Sam received a text from his old college friend, Jake. "Meet me at the diner?" 10 p.m. Sam hadn't seen Jake in years, but something about the message piqued his interest. The diner, known as Gus's, was an iconic late-night spot on the outskirts of town. It had a reputation for serving the best burgers, but rumors whispered of a darker history, disappearances linked to the place. Despite the ominous tales, Sam felt a tug of nostalgia. He remembered late-night conversations with Jake over greasy fries and milkshakes. With the rain pouring outside, he shrugged on his jacket and grabbed his keys. Chapter 2: The Diner. As he pulled into the diner's parking lot, the neon sign flickered erratically, casting an eerie glow. The diner was almost empty, save for a few scattered patrons. The jukebox played a haunting tune, and the air was thick with the smell of frying food. Sam spotted Jake in a booth in the corner, his face lit by the dim light. They exchanged quick hellos before Sam slid into the seat opposite him. Jake looked different, haggard, almost haunted. "Thanks for coming," Jake said, glancing around as if expecting someone. "Of course. What's up? You sounded urgent." Jake hesitated, then leaned in closer. "I found something out about Gus's. It's not just a diner." Chapter 3: The Dark History. Sam raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Jake pulled out his phone, scrolling through articles and photos. "Look at this." He showed Sam a grainy image of a newspaper clipping. "Several people have gone missing near here over the years. Some say it's linked to the diner." Sam felt a chill run down his spine. "Come on, man. Those are just urban legends. But this is different. I talked to someone who used to work here. They said the owner, Gus, had a strange fascination with the human body. He used to experiment with food, cooking with unusual ingredients. People started to notice." "What kind of ingredients?" Sam asked, a mix of curiosity and unease filling his voice. Jake looked around again before continuing. "They said he used to get deliveries at odd hours, unmarked packages. People who complained disappeared. It's all covered up, but there's a pattern." Chapter 4: The Waitress. Just then, a waitress approached their table, her eyes dull and expressionless. "What can I get you?" she asked, her voice flat. Jake stammered, "We'll have 2 burgers and a couple of shakes." "Coming right up," she said, turning away without a smile. Sam watched her go, noticing the way her hands trembled slightly. "Did you see that?" Sam whispered. "She looks like she's seen something." "Yeah, it's not just her. Everyone here seems off." Jake's voice was barely above a whisper. Chapter 5: The Burger. A few minutes later, the waitress returned with their food, placing the burgers in front of them. They looked delicious, too good almost. Golden brown patties with melted cheese, crispy bacon, and fresh toppings. Sam took a bite, savoring the flavor, but then he noticed Jake wasn't eating. "What's wrong?" he asked. Jake stared at his burger, his face pale. "I don't know. Something feels wrong about this." "Come on, man, it's just a burger." But as Sam chewed, he started to feel uneasy. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them. Chapter 6: The Eyes. Suddenly, Sam noticed a figure at the far end of the diner. An old man, hunched over, staring directly at them. His eyes were sunken and hollow, and he looked like he hadn't eaten in days. "What's with that guy?" Sam asked, gesturing discreetly. Jake's face went pale. "I think he's one of the missing. I read about a man who disappeared years ago. Look at his clothes. They're from the same era." The old man suddenly rose and started to shuffle towards them. Panic surged through Sam. "We should go." But the old man reached their table and leaned in, whispering, "You need to leave. Now." Chapter 7: The Escape. Before Sam could respond, the waitress reappeared, blocking their exit. "You two aren't going anywhere," she said, her voice dripping with a strange menace. Sam's heart raced. "What do you mean?" But the old man grabbed Sam's arm, his grip surprisingly strong. "They won't let you leave. You have to get out." Jake jumped up, shouting, "Let us go." He pushed past the waitress, but she grabbed his shirt, pulling him back. "Stop," she hissed, revealing a wicked grin. Chapter 8: The Truth Unveiled. Sam managed to shake free from the old man's grip. "Run!" he yelled, and they bolted for the door. But as they reached it, it wouldn't budge. It was locked from the outside. They turned back, breathless and terrified. The waitress was advancing toward them, flanked by the old man and several other patrons, all with hungry, vacant eyes. Jake shouted, "What do you want from us?" The waitress's grin widened. "You're just in time for dinner." Chapter 9. The Revelation. Suddenly, the lights flickered, and Sam caught a glimpse of the kitchen through the window. A series of strange, grotesque shapes moved in the shadows, and he realized what the diner was really serving. "People," Sam whispered, horrified. "They're serving people." The old man nodded grimly. "You don't understand. They've been taking anyone who gets too close to the truth. They'll add you to the menu." Chapter 10. The Last Stand. As panic threatened to consume them, Jake spotted a window at the back of the diner. "We can break out. Follow me." They dashed through the tables, dodging the grasping hands of the patrons, and made it to the window. Sam threw himself against it, shattering the glass. He scrambled through first, with Jake right behind him. Outside, the storm raged, but they kept running into the night, the distant sound of laughter following them. Chapter 11. The Aftermath. They finally reached their car, breathless and shaking. Sam fumbled with the keys, his hands unsteady. As the engine roared to life, he glanced back at the diner. The neon sign flickered one last time before going dark. "Did we really escape?" Jake asked, still in shock. Sam nodded, but doubt gnawed at him. They had survived, but the memories of that night haunted them both. Epilogue. The next victim. Months later, Sam received another text from Jake. "You won't believe what I found. Let's meet at Gus's." A chill ran down Sam's spine. He stared at the screen, the storm outside mirroring the one from that fateful night. The diner wasn't done with them yet. And as he prepared to meet Jake, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were just getting started. It was a late, rainy night when Sarah pulled into the parking lot of an old diner on the outskirts of town. The flickering neon sign read "Open Hours," and she hoped to grab a warm meal before continuing her drive home. Inside, the diner was empty except for a lone waitress who appeared to be in her 40s. Her smile was friendly, but her eyes held a strange sadness. Sarah slid into a booth, and the waitress approached with a menu. "Can I get you something to drink?" she asked. "Just water, please," Sarah replied, glancing around. The place had an unsettling atmosphere, with faded photographs lining the walls and a jukebox playing an eerie, slow tune. After ordering a burger, Sarah noticed the waitress watching her closely. "You're not from around here, are you?" she asked, wiping the table nervously. "No, just passing through," Sarah said, trying to keep the conversation light. As she waited, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. The shadows in the corners seemed to shift, and every creak of the diner echoed in the silence. Finally, the waitress returned with her food. "Here you go," she said, placing the plate in front of Sarah. "You should try the pie. It's our specialty." "Thanks, but I'm not really hungry for dessert," Sarah replied. The burger was steaming, but the way the waitress stared at her made her uneasy. As Sarah took her first bite, she noticed a strange taste, almost metallic. She hesitated, then looked up at the waitress, who was now standing a bit too close. "Is everything okay?" she asked, forcing a smile. "Oh, it's just that. You remind me of someone," the waitress said softly, her voice trailing off. Feeling a chill run down her spine, Sarah pushed her plate away. "I think I should go." "Stay a little longer," the waitress insisted, her expression shifting. "You haven't even tried the pie." Suddenly, the diner's door swung open, and a group of rough-looking men entered. They scanned the room and fixed their gazes on Sarah. Panic set in as she realized she was trapped. "Let her go," one of the men barked at the waitress, who only smiled wider, revealing an unsettling grin. "Don't worry, she's just one of our regulars," the waitress said. Heart racing, Sarah stood up, ready to bolt. But the men moved closer, their intentions clear. The diner, with its faded charm, now felt like a cage. In a desperate bid for escape, Sarah dashed for the door, but the waitress blocked her path. "You shouldn't have come here," she said, her voice now cold. As Sarah pushed past her, she stumbled into the rain-soaked night, the sounds of laughter echoing behind her. She never looked back, but the memory of that diner would haunt her forever, a place where the past lingered and the lost were never truly free. It was a late, rainy night when Sarah pulled into the parking lot of an old diner on the outskirts of town. The flickering neon sign read, "Open 24 hours," and she hoped to grab a warm meal before continuing her drive home. Inside, the diner was empty except for a lone waitress who appeared to be in her 40s. Her smile was friendly, but her eyes held a strange sadness. Sarah slid into a booth, and the waitress approached with a menu. "Can I get you something to drink?" she asked. "Just water, please," Sarah replied, glancing around. The place had an unsettling atmosphere, with faded photographs lining the walls and a jukebox playing an eerie, slow tune. After ordering a burger, Sarah noticed the waitress watching her closely. "You're not from around here, are you?" she asked, wiping the table nervously. "No, just passing through," Sarah said, trying to keep the conversation light. As she waited, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that she was being watched. The shadows in the corners seemed to shift, and every creak of the diner echoed in the silence. Finally, the waitress returned with her food. "Here you go," she said, placing the plate in front of Sarah. "You should try the pie. It's our specialty." "Thanks, but I'm not really hungry for dessert," Sarah replied. The burger was steaming, but the way the waitress stared at her made her uneasy. As Sarah took her first bite, she noticed a strange taste, almost metallic. She hesitated, then looked up at the waitress, who was now standing a bit too close. "Is everything okay?" she asked, forcing a smile. "Oh, it's just that. You remind me of someone," the waitress said softly, her voice trailing off. Feeling a chill run down her spine, Sarah pushed her plate away. "I think I should go." "Stay a little longer," the waitress insisted, her expression shifting. "You haven't even tried the pie." Suddenly, the diner's door swung open, and a group of rough-looking men entered. They scanned the room and fixed their gazes on Sarah. Panic set in as she realized she was trapped. "Let her go," one of the men barked at the waitress, who only smiled wider, revealing an unsettling grin. "Don't worry, she's just one of our regulars," the waitress said. Heart racing, Sarah stood up, ready to bolt. But the men moved closer, their intentions clear. The diner, with its faded charm, now felt like a cage. In a desperate bid for escape, Sarah dashed for the door, but the waitress blocked her path. "You shouldn't have come here," she said, her voice now cold. As Sarah pushed past her, she stumbled into the rain-soaked night, the sounds of laughter echoing behind her. She never looked back, but the memory of that diner would haunt her forever, a place where the past lingered and the lost were never truly free. It was a cold autumn evening when Sarah received the invitation. The card was elegant, with a black border and an embossed silver font that read, "You are cordially invited to a dinner at the Holloway estate." It came with a handwritten note from her old friend, Mark, whom she hadn't seen in years. Curiosity piqued, Sarah decided to attend. The Holloway estate was notorious in their small town. Abandoned for decades, it was said to be haunted. But Mark had always been a thrill-seeker, and she wondered what he had in store. As she prepared for the evening, Sarah tried to shake off the feeling of unease. She dressed in a warm, cozy sweater and grabbed her scarf. Despite her nerves, she was excited to see Mark again. Chapter 2, Arrival at the Estate. The Holloway estate loomed in the distance, its tall, dark silhouette piercing the night sky. Sarah parked her car and approached the front door, the crunch of leaves underfoot echoing in the silence. The door creaked open, revealing Mark, his smile warm and welcoming. "Sarah, I'm so glad you could make it." He pulled her into a hug, and she felt a wave of comfort wash over her. Inside, the house was dimly lit. Candles flickered in the corners, casting eerie shadows on the walls. The dining room table was set beautifully, with fine china and crystal glasses that sparkled in the candlelight. "Wow, you've really gone all out," Sarah remarked, admiring the setup. Mark chuckled. "I wanted it to be special. It's not every day we have a reunion." Chapter 3, The Guests. As they settled at the table, Sarah noticed two other guests, a tall, slender woman named Claire and a burly man named Tom. They exchanged polite greetings, but Sarah sensed an underlying tension among them, "Have you all known each other long?" she asked, trying to break the ice. Mark nodded. "We met through a shared interest in the paranormal. Tonight we'll share some of our experiences while enjoying a great meal." Claire's eyes sparkled. "I hope you're ready for some spooky stories." Sarah forced a smile, but her stomach churned at the thought of ghosts and ghouls. Chapter 4, The First Course. Dinner began with an impressive soup that smelled heavenly. As they ate, Mark shared tales of their adventures, ghost hunts, eerie encounters, and strange happenings. The atmosphere lightened as laughter filled the room. But as the conversation flowed, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The way Mark spoke about the estate was oddly intimate, as if he had a deep connection to it. "Have you ever felt like a place is alive?" he asked, his gaze distant. Before anyone could respond, a loud crash echoed from the kitchen. The group jumped, exchanging startled glances. Chapter 5. The tension rises. "I'll check it out," Tom said, standing up. He walked to the kitchen, his heavy footsteps echoing. The rest of them sat in silence, unease creeping in. "Everything okay?" Mark called out, but there was no answer. After a few moments, Tom returned, looking shaken. "There's something in there," he stammered, his face pale. "I think I saw a shadow move." Claire laughed nervously. "Come on, it's just the house settling." But Sarah could see the fear in Tom's eyes. Mark's expression was unreadable. Chapter 6. The Main Course. As the main course was served, a succulent roast with vegetables, Mark tried to lighten the mood. "Let's forget about the noise and enjoy the meal," he insisted. They dug into the food, and for a moment, the delicious flavors distracted them from the eerie atmosphere. But as Sarah savored her meal, she noticed something strange. The meat looked too perfect. "Mark, did you cook this yourself?" she asked, trying to sound casual. He smiled. "I had a little help from a friend. A special recipe." The way he said it sent chills down Sarah's spine. Chapter 7. Stories in the Dark. As they finished their meal, Mark suggested they share their scariest experiences. Claire went first, recounting a tale of a haunted hotel. Her voice trembled slightly, and the candles flickered as she spoke, almost as if they were responding to her fear. Tom followed, sharing a story about a ghost he encountered while hiking. His description of the spectral figure sent shivers down Sarah's spine. Finally, it was Sarah's turn. She hesitated, unsure of what to say. "I don't have any ghost stories, but I once felt a strange presence in an old house," she began, recalling a childhood experience. As she spoke, the room grew colder, and the shadows danced on the walls. She noticed that Mark was staring at her intently, his expression unreadable. Chapter 8. The Dessert. After the stories, Mark excused himself to fetch dessert. Claire and Tom exchanged nervous glances. "Something feels wrong here," Claire whispered. "This house, it's unsettling." Tom nodded. "I agree. There's an energy in this place that I can't shake off." Before they could discuss it further, Mark returned with a tray of desserts, rich chocolate cake and a peculiar pie. The pie was unlike anything Sarah had seen before, its filling a dark, glistening red. "Try it. It's my favorite," Mark urged, a hint of excitement in his voice. Despite her hesitation, Sarah took a slice, the pie's texture soft and inviting. But as she tasted it, a strange flavor filled her mouth, sweet yet metallic. "What's in this?" she asked, her voice trembling. Mark grinned. "Just a special ingredient." Chapter 9. The Revelation. Suddenly, the lights flickered and went out, plunging the room into darkness. The only sound was the soft crackle of the candles, creating an eerie atmosphere. "Mark?" Claire called out, her voice shaking. "Stay calm," Mark replied, but there was an edge to his tone. "Let me check the fuse." As he left the room, Sarah felt a rising sense of panic. She turned to Tom and Claire. "What do you think is going on?" "I don't know," Tom said, his voice low, "but I think we need to get out of here." Just then, a loud bang echoed from the hallway, and the shadows seemed to close in around them. Chapter 10. The Escape. Mark returned, looking pale. "The power's out, but I have candles. We can wait it out." "No. We need to leave, Claire insisted, her eyes wide with fear. Don't be ridiculous, Mark snapped. We can't just leave. This is my home. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Your home? She echoed, confusion flooding her mind. Suddenly the door slammed shut, trapping them inside. Panic surged through the group as they rushed to the door, but it wouldn't budge. Mark, what's happening? Tom shouted, fear etched on his face. Mark's expression shifted, a dark smile creeping onto his lips. You shouldn't have come here. Chapter 11, The Truth Unveiled. As the candlelight flickered, illuminating the room, Sarah's heart raced. What do you mean? Mark stepped closer, his eyes glinting with something sinister. This estate has a history of sacrifices. What? Claire gasped. You can't be serious. I am, Mark said, his voice low. The dinners, the stories, they're part of a ritual. You were all invited for a reason. Tom backed away, looking horrified. You can't be serious. You're joking, right? Mark shook his head. The pie, the meat, it's all part of the offering. Sarah's stomach dropped as realization hit her. You're saying we're the sacrifice? Mark's smile widened. Exactly. But don't worry, it'll be a memorable dinner. Chapter 12, The Final Struggle. Fear surged through Sarah as she darted toward the kitchen, desperate to find a way out. Tom and Claire followed, adrenaline fueling their movements. They burst into the kitchen, searching for a window or another exit. But the room felt like a maze, shadows lurking in every corner. Over here, Claire shouted, pointing to a window at the back. They rushed toward it, but as they tried to open it, they heard Mark's laughter behind them. You think you can escape? You're mine now. Chapter 13, The Last Hope. Just as Mark advanced toward them, a loud crash echoed from the front of the house. The sound of breaking glass filled the air, followed by shouts. Help! We need help! Tom yelled, desperation in his voice. Stay back, Mark shouted, his expression turning furious. You don't understand what's at stake. As he turned to confront the noise, Sarah seized the opportunity. She and Claire pushed against the window, finally breaking it open. Go! Now! Sarah yelled, urging Tom to climb through first. They scrambled out into the cool night air, the sound of sirens growing closer. Chapter 14, The Aftermath. They ran until they reached the road, where the flashing lights of police cars illuminated the darkness. Officers rushed to them, and Sarah collapsed into their arms, trembling. What happened? An officer asked. Mark. He's in there, Claire cried,